goods can be transported by sea from Mexico.
It has the power to kind of be a time machine, and the scope of it is just beyond anything we've seen in entertainment offerings. But before we get to the land and the core of it, I'd like us to go to
years in Mexico, or wherever he disappeared to. He returned not as a desperado, but as a gunman.
The day has come to reveal what El Paso Verse truly is about. And now that we lay out all the details here with the map and the land and the underlying value here, you'll get a sense of why we're so passionate about this vision. First thing I should probably do is wipe down the whiteboard. So in El Paso Verse, we have three main verticals or pillars, and they are: we're in the book business, publishing ebooks, print, and audiobooks as collectibles, and they set the tone for what El Paso Verse is about. This is where everything started for us, and it's up to the community to decide which books get turned into films, and they will be released with very unique collectibles called motion prints. Today we're going to focus on the land, the real world assets of El Paso Verse. That's where it all comes to life. So let's dive right in. So start like that. Okay, now we're going to look at the maps behind me, because we've done a global search to find the right locations to emulate the 1880s. That's not as easy as you would think, because the world is, there's very little land preservation and conservation around the world. There's power lines, there's modernization, and it's not so easy to find. What we've been looking for is what looks like the borderland between the US and Mexico, hence the word El Paso Verse. That's basically the center point of, you see here, these pins represent where the character from our books, Morgan Kane, traveled to and had different missions as a US Marshal or Texas Ranger. They're not all of them, but there's some of them. These are some of the stories that really stand out. And as you can see, there's a lot of activity up here in the borderland between US and Mexico. And this pin right here is El Paso. This is where we got the name of the company from, because this is the center point that almost every gunfighter, every story passes through. And on the Mexican side, you have Ciudad Juarez as a sister town. And that's basically the starting point of the kind of land that we have to find. However, El Paso does not look today anything like it looked like back then. So the objective was to find similar kind of landscape, similar kind of topography that is untouched, where we can build what was back then. All right, quick reference for those that need a refresher. Texas is the biggest state out of the lower 48 states. It's vast. And if we look at it here, you'll see that there's these large areas here that's still like the Old West, while the more populated areas are in the eastern part of Texas, northeastern. We have focused on the western part, the ones that emulate what we talked about in the borderland between US and Mexico. And we are zoning in here on Big Bend National Park, which is this area right here. And El Paso is right here for reference. And this is the Rio Grande that runs all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. So now let's go down to, Big Bend National Park. So Big Bend is one of the national parks in the US that gets around 500,000 visitors per year. It's got epic scenery and landscapes. I mean, we're going to get into pictures of this, but it has, one of the main events is the Rio Grande River that runs through it. When you visit this park, you drive in through one out of two main highways. You either come down this road here, or you come down this road. Either way, it's a long drive. You have to go for about two hours plus to get to the entrance to the park, which is either here or here. The key area that people visit is this mountain area that has very diverse topography, a lot of animal life, and it's one of the most spectacular places I've ever been, along with Rio Grande Village and a crossing into Mexico that we'll get back to shortly. So the area that you see staked out on this map here, marked in red, is one of the largest collections of land held by one private owner in the United States. The person who's been collecting this land has been doing so for over 30 years, and they've been able to buy land that is connected into one lot. The total size of this is about 360,000 acres, and it's compared to the size of Los Angeles. It's a really vast area, But what's really interesting is that the topography is very similar to the national park. It's very hard to, as you're driving in, you can't really say, oh, I'm in a national park now and here I'm not. The road going in is just epic as you drive in. I'm going to show you some videos here of my drive into the area. Now, we don't need to buy all this in one go. I would prefer that we do buy it after a while, but to begin with, this right here, this is the land that El Paso Verse needs to buy. This is 90,000 acres of land that is truly untouched. It is so spectacular. Once you see the pictures in the moment, you're going to just be blown away. It has 5 miles of riverfront. I've never seen anything like it. It is so untouched and so perfect for what we need. And the fact that it has the Rio Grande River, the water, it's got this deep, rich body of water running through it, and that it borders Mexico. It hits all the elements of the different levels of El Paso Verse. We're going to have level 1, level 2, level 3. I'm going to explain in a second what that is. Let's first see some pictures. So here you see a view of the Rio Grande and the massive landscape around it. I mean, this is unbeatable. There's nothing like it that I found around the world. Everything else is a secondary copy of this. This is part of that 5-mile front of the Rio Grande that is part of the property. And there is nothing. There's no eyesores. There's no power lines. There's no highways. You're in it, 100%. There's nothing to take you out of the elements of 1880. This land is diverse enough to have 3 very different towns where you travel for days from one to another. And by the time you get there, you're in a different land. I'm talking massive scale, full civilizations. The land has water on it, which is a big deal. If you're living in these harsh conditions with the desert, the one thing you really want is water. I mean, this would be a great location for building a town because you do have a creek, so this town would always have water flowing past it. The plan here is that we're going to be using this land for film productions for the next 4 or 5 years, where we are shooting out everything. So we're not just going in to build these towns for the El Paso Verse, we're building it for our movies. And by the time we're done with that, we take all the film equipment out, we shut it down, and we open El Paso Verse. Yeah, so that gives you a taste and feel of what is there. There's more to it. This is just a few frames. Now, this shows what I was illustrating over by the board. This is the Big Bend National Park. This is also National Park territory. Everything in green is National Park. And then you have the land offered for sale. And we were talking about this part right here. I mean, this is bordering National Park. This is National Park land. It's that caliber, it's that size, and it's just... I know they've been in negotiations with the state of Texas to buy this. That's probably the most applicable buyer outside of El Paso Verse, but we're talking about peeling off 90,000 acres to begin with right here. And if we grow at the rate that I expect us to do, we should be expanding and picking up this land as well. All right, so we're talking about basically this land right here is about 90,000 acres. The asking price here is 600, let's say, for this assumption here, let's just say $500 per acre. We're looking at an acquisition cost of about $45 million if we buy all of it. Now, what's important here are the access. All right, so this here is highway, I think 90 or something. It's a really good road. We have an access road here that would take people right up into the El Paso Verse, and then you arrive at the hub. We're going to talk about what the hub is. Then we're going to talk about how you enter into the El Paso Verse and the transition of really arriving there. Then you're going to get to level 1. Level 1 will be somewhere, let's say, this is all to be decided how we lay this out. We have to do this together because there's a lot of work to do here, a lot of planning, a lot of considering what is the best utilization of the land. But let's say that we're basically buying what you see here in red. The hub would be right here. Level 1 would be in here somewhere. Level 2 would be in here somewhere. And then we can either build level 3 close to the border and hit the same notes creatively and experience-wise what we're talking about. Better yet, I think we should take advantage of the land that's being offered this side of the border that goes like that. It's like a T or like a fan. And you have then 35 miles of riverfront on the Rio Grande, and we can create the full experience of what it would be like to cross into Mexico. And this would then be level 3. Heading into Mexico, this is where we should be taking level 3, in my opinion, and it's just inescapable to this adventure that this brings. I did a test run on this summer, and I'm going to show it to you. We can look at a video later. But before we do that, I want to really explain what level 2, level 1, level 2, level 3 means, because this will come full circle on the whole experience. Like Christian said, there's a lot of other things to talk about: the laws, the ordinances of the city, the terms and how you can enter this place, and what the economy will mean being in there. It's going to create a lot of opportunities, because living in 1880, it's hard, and it's not easy. But we do have some conveniences, and the key part of that is this train. We have an import ability to import everything from beer to materials to livestock to anything you can imagine that is period correct. And then we have to keep control of making sure that nothing but period correct elements come in. This right here is the heart of a Paso Verse, and it's extraordinary. So we got to get there as soon as possible. So let's jump over to the whiteboard and really break down what the hub is, what level 1 is, what level 2 is, and what it would mean to have a level 3 like this. So, and once we're done with that, we got to talk about the real world assets, tokenizing this place, and the whole economy around it. Right. There's a lot going on here and a lot of details, but they're all relevant to you understanding what we're talking about. So let's start with the hub. All right, the hub is where it's the starting point for anyone arriving at the El Paso Verse, whether it's goods and materials arriving or it's people arriving. This is the landing site. This is where the first point of entry. You'll have a depot for all those, everything that's imported, everything comes in and out. You'll have a train station and many, many, many more things that we'll get to in a moment. We're going to fill this out. There's about 20 other things that's here. And from here, you travel to level 1. It's a large scale town of the year 1882. It's a total time machine. Once you're right here, you have, these buildings, everything is here. There'll be 3 stories. There'll be, a scale of nothing we've seen in Western towns or ghost towns around the world. This is a fully functioning town with everything it needs to operate. It obviously, is centered around its own train station. The town will be built out of brick, wood. It'll be adobes. It'll be a mix of everything that made up the towns of 1882. And we're going to look at some pictures in a later video to really see what that's going to look like. We'll talk to Christian, who has dedicated his life to building these kind of towns and sets, and like we did here with this first building. This is a land office, and but this is going to be a full-scale town. Now, level 2 is another town, more the same. The difference is, this is town number 2, in a very different location. It'll be about 15 to 20 miles in distance, in traveling distance from the first town. So that means you can travel by train, you can travel by stagecoach, you can travel by horse, but it's an arduous journey. If you take any of the latter ones, train is probably the most comfortable. If you're coming into this town as someone who's visiting for a few days for an overnight trip, what will happen is you'll arrive at the hub. You will go through the process of getting checked in, changing all your clothes, getting rid of your cell phones. You cannot bring anything in that's made after 1882. You can show up in your own costume and your own, fabrics and items, or you can select from our vast warehouse of everything that we'll have. But once you enter, you're on this train, you step into the 1882. This train, when you're coming back, will pass through town 2, but you're not allowed to get off the train. It'll just pass right through, and you'll go back to the hub, and you'll leave El Paso Verse with a short and sweet visit of 1882. Now, if you want something more than that, you got to get involved in the deep level of El Paso Verse, and that means you can live here. You can live here for weeks, for years, and living in the old 1880s is difficult. It's challenging. It has a lot of challenges that we're not used to. But what makes this one possible compared to like survival programs and all that is that we will have the conveniences of a civilization at that time. We will have, the train will bring in ice, big blocks of ice, so you'll be able to have cold drinks, you will have fresh meats, it'll bring in livestock, it'll bring in everything that's needed to sustain and live as if they did in the 1880s. It'll be a total time machine. But level 2 will have its own population. It'll have somewhere, we estimate, about 10,000 people plus. As it grows in this part of the map, we have to figure out exactly how much we can hold, but the town is one thing. It'll have places you can live and build your houses out in the country, and this is the real deal. This is for the people that really want to have an epic adventure, live in that economy, work there. You can build your business there. We're going to hear from Christian what his plans are to build a saloon and how he's going to make it air-cooled and air-conditioned with what was correct at the time, using wind tunnel and ice. And we'll get into all the details. There's so many elements to this, and how the newspaper will work, how the police and the law will work, how, everything with firearms, livestock, water. There's so much to this, and it involves so many people. And it relates to you as an investor, it relates to you as someone who's passionate about chickens, woodworking, animals, nature, or just escaping all the craziness of the world and the way the world is going right now, because we believe this is going to be the last frontier, the last true place that gets you back to the element of the things that really matter. That's what this time machine will do. That's what this place will do. So Town 2 is very special. It means, and here, we're going to get to the economy, how the economy works, but then we mentioned earlier level 3. The difference between level 2 and level 3 is part of the same access for the people that live in El Paso Verse, but it's going to be a Mexican experience. A Mexican town. They might have plus some villages that are smaller. And this will be on the other side of the border if we go for the land across the border. If not, we can build it close to the border, but I say we build it, then you cross that Rio Grande and you go in and you experience it. That's the incredible possibility we have here. We don't have that anywhere else in the world. This is pristine land on the border that is set up for this. In summary of these different levels, what they mean, I want to make clear that level 1, that's for tourism. That's for all the people that come to Big Bend National Park, people that come from all over the world that want to visit and experience this for a short period of time. They'll get very close to the same experience, but obviously it's not a long-term adventure like these offer. But I think once you do visit that, it's going to say, okay, I want to have more of this. I want to go deeper. I want to feel what it's really like. But I mentioned here 10,000 people is what we think its initial capacity is before we expand the land with more lots. But this here, the visitor center of it, should receive something like 500,000 people per year. It has that potential. It shouldn't be too hard to reach that number. We think it could be much, much higher. But in order to experience any of this, where it comes together is around the economy. We are going to have one means of payment for all of this, which is going to be not dollars, not pesos, but pesos. The pesos is key. This opens up the possibility for you to live here, for you to experience it, to have any utilization of the entertainment offerings that leads up to this, be it the movies, the books, the premieres, but pesos is the key. That's our own economy. It's going to live initially off-chain. We might bring it on-chain. It'll be its own token. It might, to be determined by the community, maybe it needs to go on the stock exchange, but we believe it should stay as a token, and it's going to be exchanged. You can exchange dollars and anything else into this. It'll be a physical currency in El Paso Verse, and it'll be a digital currency offline. And anyone else entering or wanting to enter after you will need to buy Pasos. So it's going to be a very valuable commodity that we would like to roll out here very, very soon. So I think that's it for today. There's many more levels to this, a lot of elements, and we got to dive in now because we got to talk about the details of each one and how all this comes together. So be sure to check in to our stream, our Q&A. We want you heavily involved in the discussions. Any question that you have of what it would be like to live in the 1880s, how this time machine would work, this is the time to bring it on. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. So look forward to seeing you next time.
In the mid-1870s, Morgan Kane disappeared, apparently without any trace. But after 2 years in Mexico, or wherever he disappeared to,